up, guys? It's Flash back with some more charts. Another video. Wednesday, October 9, 6:05 p.m. Got a couple different ratios and some tickers for you guys today that I think are interesting. Would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you find this helpful, feel free to give me a like. Really helps me out. But ultimately, these charts are super fascinating, and I would love some feedback, some general opinions from you guys too. But first up, we're going to look at the Nasdaq measured in gold. And this is on the monthly time frame. This all goes back to 1988. And what really catches my eye here is, are we somewhere in like 94 before the dot-com bust, and is it kind of like the AI craze? And like, is productivity from AI going to generate so much money, so much boosts in the economy, et cetera, that we could have a similar look and feel of a blow-off top? That seems very far-fetched to me, because like, in order for this thing to match what it did back in the late 90s into 2000, like, we would have to see some crazy price movement, like overvalued bubble territory. And that's kind of what we're already talking about today, like price to earnings ratios, like the market caps of these big names. Like, how would they go up so much that this chart would repeat, right? So I'm leaning towards this rolling over, right? But you can't deny the similarities in the chart itself. And so it's just like super interesting. Like, we can talk about fundamentals, but this chart just really catches my eye for some way or another. But we're gonna know if this is gonna break out or roll over. So we'll just keep an eye on it, right? But it's so much fun to kind of track, right? So that's the Nasdaq measured in gold. Kind of brings me over to NVDA, right? Let's go into the 2 weekly time frame on NVDA. Like this, and this is what I mean. Like, could this thing just keep going up? Right? Who's saying it can't? And that's why I'm like, this is a bullish chart. Yes, it's already made an incredible run, but you can see these channels it's forming, and it's going parabolic, right? There's no denying that. If we look on the regular price chart, like, that's a parabola. And that's why it's like, I do think it's kind of had its fun in the sun. But hey, we zoom in a little bit on the weekly, on the 3-day, 2-day. Like, this thing is just going to continue. It looks like it's just continuing to go up and to the right? So that's where I'm like, okay, is this AI thing, like, could this be something that no one's even kind of contemplating, right? Could this lead to so much human flourishness and productivity that the valuations just skyrocket? So I think that's kind of what the ratios will tell us, and NVIDIA will tell us. Like, we can even look at NVIDIA versus gold. Really nice channel here even. And it's at the top of the channel, kind of squeezing up in this, bluish triangle, if you will. This is, again, on the 2-day time frame. And yeah, I think this is gonna continue to squeeze up and to the right until it breaks down or it pops up and keeps going. Right? So I don't know. NVIDIA is kind of its own animal, I've been realizing. And so another ratio, the classic SPX, gold to SPX. And so, I've had these lines on the chart have not moved for so long. I just added in this blue channel. It may be a channel, maybe not. But we have this wedge, looks like it's turning the ship, and gold is attracting capital out of the S&P 500. But it's not going to happen overnight. Like, this could continue to go sideways, into 2027, 2026, 2027, if it's going to continue up this bull. This bull is just a guideline, right? But what if it also, like, rolls over and stays in this channel, right? I think that could be worth considering, just given the circumstances. And I love my uranium stocks, and that gold outperforming the S&P 500 will attract capital into the commodity complex. But I think it's good to look at it from both sides and weigh the probabilities, weigh the outcomes, et cetera. But this, I'm feeling that the gold is slowly outperforming the S&P 500. Another ratio is Dow Jones measured in gold. You can zoom way out here. And I mean, we're in like overvalued territory. Like, this is okay. Dow Jones, super strong against gold, could roll over, right? And then this is where it gets, you want to be looking at gold and when it reaches down here. I mean Dow Jones. Sorry, I got that backwards. Regardless, you kind of get what I'm saying. This looks like this over here. It could be rolling over, and it looks like very closely to rolling over and being a waterfall, right? So this chart specifically really gives me the confidence that, yes, we are entering a gold bull era. That Nasdaq to gold chart, likely would roll over. I would imagine if the Dow Jones is rolling over versus gold as well. But again, is this AI thing something that is bigger than anyone thinks, right? So that kind of brings us to uranium. We'll look at the metal, the price of the metal, and zoom in on the weekly. And that's breaking out. Like that's a breakout. And it's at the top of this bowl, top of this cup, if you will. This could even be the handle, like of a massive cup and handle for uranium, right? So let's look at the price of the metal versus the S&P 500. Clear as day. Big strong base, breakout, back test of that base. Throw that 36-year, 3-year moving average on, or right on top of the moving average. Right, so this just looks like a classic stage 1 breakout. Entering stage 2, uranium, the price of the metal versus the S&P 500 on the macro time frame. Right, and then if we want to, let's look at CCJ measured in the price of the metal. Because if the price of the metal is going to be outperforming the S&P 500, we would hope that CCJ is outperforming the metal, or at least staying with it, right? And so when we get pretty much, this only goes back to 2007, so I'm not sure 100% what to do with this data series, but it's gone sideways against the metal. And so this could also be a big base, and we could be gearing up to break out of this base and continue higher. We'll know if that happens. There is some interesting breakout lines right here. But for the most part, it's hanging with the price of the metal, up and down, generally, going sideways. So that makes me think that CCJ will hang with this metal versus the S&P 500 chart. You can also look at CCJ measured in the S&P 500. Pretty steady uptrend, a little bit of a pullback here. I can kind of see an expanding wedge, maybe. You want to call it that, consolidation to sideways, down a little bit. But again, kind of at some resistance here. So definitely interesting to follow along. I still think CCJ is going to have legs here. And then I like to look at NVDA versus CCJ, because I think that is a super interesting ratio. In the long term, big bowl, big kind of cup formation, didn't even form a handle, or maybe this is the handle. That's kind of wild to say, right? But you could look at it both ways, like big cup, crazy handle, or this is an expanding, broadening wedge, could be a topping structure. So we'll zoom in on the weekly. Maybe the hike in the Shi will give this a little bit more clarity. But definitely broke down out of this trend line. Only had a couple touch points on this one. We're going to have to see what happens here. But CCJ could be kind of taking the lead here. We don't know. You have a kind of a classic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves up, or like an ABC with an ABC at the top. So I think we want to watch, if we break this high to the downside, that'll be our signal that CCJ is officially taken over. But no denying NVIDIA. Let's look at NVIDIA on the 2-day. Like that thing just looks like a beast, and it's not slowing down, right? And then last but not least, I wanted to look at Encore Energy. If we zoom out on Encore, you kind of have that big cup and handle feel. If we go on the daily, this is kind of what I was talking about when this correction started. Like I'm looking for a 3-wave move, like 1, 2, 3, right? And then within that, you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down here. And then we got right back above this mark. It was kind of a double bottom. Like they didn't really give you a chance to play that strategy, so to speak, and get in there, but double bottom. And now when we retrace this whole thing, I think, actually I was doing this before. Look at this structure. Like we retrace like this whole structure, right? Wherever this started, maybe we could drag this down here or right here. But generally, EU, big move up, 3-wave move down or 5-wave move down into the 618, the 0.5 kind of pocket. And now we're resuming upwards. So I think we got to stay on CCJ. That'll kind of direct us where the rest of this space is going. But I thought this was pretty interesting price action. But overall, guys, let me know what you think. Again, this chart is just kind of crazy to me, the similarities that it has. Drop me a like if you found this useful. I'll see you in the next one.